how are you? I've missed you more than words can ever express. Every moment away from you felt like a lifetime, and now that I'm finally here with you, my heart is overflowing with love for my beautiful family. You are my joy, my strength, and my greatest blessing. I love you so much, my beautiful family. Before we dive into today's story, I want to take a moment and say a heartfelt prayer for you all. May the light of love and peace shine upon each and every one of you. May your hearts always be filled with endless joy, and may you be wrapped in warmth, surrounded by kindness wherever you go. May blessings follow you wherever you take your steps, and may happiness and laughter be your daily companions. Above all, may you always feel cherished and protected in this beautiful world we share together. Amen. My beautiful family, I've been away for so long, but I never stopped thinking about you. Every single day, I carried you all in my heart, and today, I wanted to do something truly special for you. I created a video that's not just a story, but a way to reconnect with you, to remind you how much I've missed you. Please don't mind if my voice is a little different or if I make some mistakes. After so much time, it feels a bit strange, but I just wanted to see if I can still bring you the stories you love. Now I need your honest opinion. Should I continue reading or should someone else take over? Your thoughts mean everything to me, my beautiful family. The Moonlight Charity Gala. It was the kind of event that Nova Rivers usually avoided, one of those glamorous gatherings where crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, champagne flowed endlessly, and the conversations rarely ventured beyond stock portfolios and vacation homes. At 32, she had long since realized that her work as an art therapist for underprivileged children rarely impressed the diamond-draped socialites who attended such events. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had a mission. She stood at the edge of the ballroom in a simple, midnight blue gown borrowed from her roommate, her dark curls cascading down her shoulders. The room around her buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and meaningless chatter. But Nova couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here. "Remember why you're here," she whispered to herself, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her untouched champagne flute. The community center where she worked was struggling. They needed funding, and pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Across the room, Orion Kai, the CEO of the Kai Foundation, adjusted his perfectly tailored jacket. At 38, he had perfected the art of listening while scanning the room, skillfully managing corporate events with practiced precision. He nodded politely to the silver-haired board member beside him, all the while keeping an eye on the crowd. Then something caught his attention. A flash of midnight blue caught his peripheral vision. He turned, and for the first time that evening, the world around him seemed to slow. There, standing at the edge of the ballroom, was Nova, a striking contrast to the women circling the room in their elegant gowns. There was something in her posture, a quiet dignity, an authenticity that made the room's opulence feel suddenly out of place. When their eyes met, it was as if something clicked between them, an unspoken recognition, a possibility. Orion felt something stir in him that he hadn't experienced in years, maybe never. For the next hour, Nova and Orion stayed in their quiet corner, unnoticed by the surrounding guests. As the gala continued, their conversation flowed naturally. Nova shared stories of her students, stories that made her heart ache with pride and pain. She spoke about the 7-year-old boy who hadn't spoken since witnessing domestic violence, yet found a way to express his deepest fears through a painting. The teenage girl who expressed her grief over her mother's cancer diagnosis through delicate clay sculptures. And the group of refugee children who created a mural to represent their journey to America. Orion listened with rare, genuine attention. His questions weren't just polite inquiries, they reflected a deeper understanding of the trauma that shaped these children's lives. And the way he looked at her with such intensity made Nova feel as though she wasn't just telling her stories, but being understood on a deeper level. As their conversation deepened, Nova realized something unexpected. She had unconsciously moved closer to him. The space between them had closed, and it felt right. There was no judgment in his gaze, no pity, just a quiet empathy that resonated with her. A connection, unspoken but powerful, seemed to grow with every word exchanged. The more they talked, the more she found herself opening up, sharing the real struggles of her work. How the center was always on the brink of closing due to lack of funding, how the roof leaked every spring, and how the children's art supplies were always running low. When she finished, Orion was quiet for a moment, his jaw tightening as he processed everything she had said. Then he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Unacceptable," he said simply. "You shouldn't have to work under these conditions. These children deserve better." Nova blinked in surprise. No one had ever looked at her work like this before. No one had ever truly understood the importance of it in the way that Orion did. He extended his hand, and though she hesitated for a moment, she shook it, feeling an undeniable jolt of connection shoot up her arm. "I'm Orion Kai," he said, with a soft smile, "and I think you're doing something incredible." The weeks following the gala were a whirlwind for Nova. Gifts began arriving at the community center. Beautiful, expensive art supplies, always exactly what the children needed most. They arrived without a name attached, just a simple note that said, "For the children who need it most." Nova had no doubt who was behind them. Orion had made it clear that he cared about her work, but the truth about his generosity only became more complicated as time passed. Despite the support, a strange tension began to form between them. It wasn't just the gifts or his continued involvement in the community center. It was the feeling that Nova couldn't shake. She was grateful for everything Orion had done, but she couldn't help but feel there was something more behind it, something she couldn't quite name. And then, just when she thought everything was moving forward, the truth came crashing down. Lyra, Orion's wife, appeared out of nowhere. It was a confrontation that shook Nova to her core. She stood in the doorway of the center one afternoon, her icy gaze sweeping over Nova with an unreadable expression. There was no mistaking it. The woman standing before her was not just a figure in Orion's past, she was his present, and now their lives were irrevocably tangled. "So this is what you've been doing?" Lyra sneered, looking at Nova with a mixture of disdain and bitterness. "Stealing my husband's attention, my husband's time. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Nova felt the world shift beneath her feet as the realization hit her like a physical blow. She had been deceived. Orion had never told her the truth. He was still married, and everything they had shared, every word, every connection, had been built on a lie. Orion's voice, usually so calm, was now desperate. "Nova, please, it's not what you think." "No," she interrupted, her voice trembling with a mix of hurt and disbelief. "You lied to me. All this time you never told me the truth." Orion's silence was enough. The trust they had built, everything they had shared, had been shattered in a single moment. In the aftermath of the painful revelation, everything changed. Nova withdrew, her heart heavy with betrayal, and Orion found himself lost in the wreckage of his own choices. The walls he had built around his life, around Nova crumbled with every passing day. But deep down, despite everything, he knew he couldn't give up on what they had shared. He couldn't let the mistakes of his past destroy the future they might have together. Orion knew he had to make things right, not just for Nova, but for himself too. And so, over the next few weeks, he set out to prove that the connection they had was real, that despite the lies, his feelings for her had never been false. He started by quietly becoming involved in the community center again. This time, it wasn't just about donations. Orion volunteered his time, working side by side with the children, with Nova. He sat on the floor, smudged his hands with paint, and helped the children with their artwork. He listened, asked questions, and showed the kind of attention and care that was rare in his world. And with each gesture, each action, he showed Nova that he was committed. He wasn't just the CEO who wrote checks. He was the man who cared deeply about the work she did, about the children who needed her. And he was the man who wanted to rebuild her trust, piece by piece. But it wasn't easy for Nova. The wounds from his deception still ran deep. She was torn. Part of her wanted to forgive him, to believe in the man who had shown her a kindness she had never expected, and part of her was terrified of being hurt again. In those quiet moments, when the walls between them softened and their eyes met across the room, something stirred in her. A part of her began to hope, just a little, that there might still be a future for them. But the fear remained. Could she really trust him again? As the months passed, the tension between Nova and Orion began to ease. The small moments of genuine care, the time spent working together, began to rebuild something that had once felt lost. Nova, now pregnant with Orion's triplets, found herself at a crossroads. She had to make a choice. Could she allow herself to trust again, or would the weight of the past keep them apart forever? Orion, for his part, knew that the road to redemption would be long and uncertain. But he had never been more certain of one thing. He loved Nova. He loved her in a way he had never loved anyone before. And now, with the arrival of their children on the horizon, he knew he had to prove that love not just in words, but in action. One evening, as Nova sat in the quiet comfort of her living room, Orion stood by the window, gazing out at the city lights. The weight of his past still lingered in his heart, but the future, the family they were about to build together, was the light that pulled him forward. "I've been thinking," Orion said, turning to face her, "about the future, about what we can build together. Not just for the children, but for us too. A future that's built on truth. A future where we're not weighed down by secrets and lies." Nova's eyes met his, and for the first time in a long while, she saw the man she had once believed in. The man who was trying, truly trying, to make things right. "I think about that too," Nova said softly, placing her hand on her growing belly. "I want our children to know that love is real, that it's not perfect, but it's strong. I want them to see that even after all the hurt, we can start over." Orion walked over to her and gently placed his hand on hers. There, in that quiet, intimate moment, something shifted. The past, with all its pain and betrayal, began to feel a little less heavy. "I'll never ask you to forget," Orion whispered, his voice filled with sincerity. "But I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know that you and the children are my everything." Just when it seemed like Nova and Orion had begun to heal, their lives were once again thrust into chaos. Lyra, Orion's estranged wife, made a sudden and destructive return, her fury more evident than ever. One evening, as Nova and Orion walked along the beach, enjoying a quiet moment, Lyra appeared, her face twisted with anger. She stood before them, her posture tense, the gleam of a knife in her hand catching the fading sunlight. "How touching," Lyra sneered, her voice laced with venom. "The happy family taking a sunset stroll. Do you really think you'll have your perfect ending?" Nova's heart raced as Lyra moved closer, her hand outstretched with the knife. Orion stepped in front of Nova, protecting her, but in the struggle that followed, Orion was injured. The knife plunged into his side, and Nova screamed, her world spinning as she saw him fall to the sand. But help came quickly. Local fishermen arrived, subduing Lyra and calling for medical assistance. As Orion lay on the beach, struggling to stay conscious, Nova refused to leave his side. Her hands pressed against his wound, willing him to stay awake. "Stay with me," Nova whispered through her tears. "We're going to be okay. We'll raise our children together. Stay with me." With the help of the fishermen and emergency responders, Orion was rushed to the hospital, and despite the odds, he survived the attack. But the trauma, both physical and emotional, left its mark. As Orion recovered, his thoughts were focused on the future, not just his recovery, but their future. "I made a promise to you and the babies," he said weakly from his hospital bed, "and I intend to keep it. I will be the father they deserve. I will be the man you need." The days following the attack were a blur of hospital rooms and quiet recovery. Orion's physical wounds began to heal, but the emotional scars ran deeper. Still through it all, Nova remained by his side, her strength and love the anchor he desperately needed. In the weeks that followed, something beautiful began to emerge. Nova, despite the pain of everything that had happened, began to open her heart again. She saw Orion's unwavering dedication not just to her, but to the family they were building together. As the days grew longer and the seasons changed, so did their bond. Together, they navigated the difficult journey of parenthood, preparing for the arrival of their triplets. Each day, Nova saw Orion grow more into the man she knew he could be, honest, loving, and committed to their future. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Orion reached over and took Nova's hand. The air between them was filled with the gentle understanding they had both been craving. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice soft but steady, "for everything, but I will never stop fighting for us, for this family. I know I've made mistakes, but I promise you and our children are my priority. Always." Nova squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of his words settle into her heart. They had come a long way, from lies and betrayal to a place of healing and trust. "I know," she whispered, "and that's all I need. You've shown me what love really means. Now we move forward, together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its golden glow across the water, Nova rested her hand on her swollen belly, the quiet hum of their growing family filling the air. In that moment, she realized something profound. Love, true love, isn't about perfection. It's about rebuilding after the storms, learning to trust again, and embracing the beauty of second chances. Their story wasn't one of flawless happiness. It was a story of pain, healing, forgiveness, and above all, love. A love that had survived the darkest of times and emerged stronger. And in that moment, as Orion leaned in and kissed her forehead, Nova knew that their future would be bright. It would be filled with laughter, with love, and with the 3 tiny lives they were about to welcome into the world. "We're stronger now," Nova whispered, her voice full of certainty. "Stronger than ever." And as the waves crashed softly against the shore, they knew together they could face whatever life brought their way. What does family mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt tales of love, family, and second chances.